Yeah. Oh, you.
Are you gonna participate the class in this room?
Yeah. Yeah.
The US foreign class?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I don't have time to go down. We got to start now. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Welcome to U.S. Foreign Policy. And I'm here in beautiful room K338 because I just finished with the European policymaking class, and I didn't finish up soon enough. I've got to try to save the Zoom recording of the class, and the computer is still saving that. And so I brought my laptop up here, and I'm using my laptop. I'm not using the classroom computer. So hopefully you're able to hear me fairly well because I'm using the microphone inbuilt audio in my laptop. And so today is our short class, and you know, it's nice to be back to the laptop because this is easier to use because I've used it enough to become familiar with it. And we're still trying to get clear with the classroom computers because it's in Korean language, and you know, we have to accommodate that. And hopefully, you know, we'll continue to develop these capabilities. I think it just would be better if all the professors just brought their own laptop and plugged them into the projector cable, so we could use our laptops instead of having to use the classroom computers. But you know, who knows? Maybe they'll do that someday. All right. So first thing to do, and I have to make sure that I don't make the same mistake that I made in the other class and forget to do attendance, and that is attendance. So attendance for week 6, add smart attendance. Your number is 360. That's your lucky number, 360. And so I will just let you enter that in, 360, and then I will go on to the rest of the class activities for today. First thing to do is go to assignments and remind you that your midterm, hooray, your midterm is, and I got to make sure that I share the screen. Let me go to share screen. I haven't done that yet, I think. Okay, so share screen. So there it is. So yeah, just to go back to the attendance, and I thought I already, well, 360 is the number to enter in for smart attendance for U.S. foreign policy. So back to assignments, and your midterm is due. And so the midterm here is, again, critique the statement. The trends in U.S. foreign policy since 1945 show that the domestic characteristics of a country's political system are secondary issues in predicting how a country acts in international relations. So that comes from realism. As I pointed out, I think at the beginning of the semester, right? That realists like Hans Morgenthau and neo-realists, or structural realists as they're also called, like Kenneth Waltz and John Mersheimer and others, would say, you know, it really doesn't matter ultimately in terms of long-term trends what kind of government you have. If you have a democracy or a communist dictatorship, if there is an opportunity for a country to expand its influence and power in the world, it will. And they will come up with some kind of justification for it, reflecting their history and traditions and ideology, but it will be simply a self-serving way of justifying what they want to do anyway. And this, you know, I just finished talking about European Union policymaking, about motivated reasoning, and how actors will convince themselves that that to do what they want to do, and however they feel that they must do so, reflecting their traditions, their understanding of their history, their ideologies. So Americans will say that they are expanding into Latin America or expanding into Asia to protect human rights and democracy, reflecting, of course, American ideology that derives from American history and America's experience, America's inheritance from Great Britain. Whereas, of course, the Soviet Union, according to a realist like Hans Morgenthau, would use different symbols, different justifications, different, what he called nationalistic universalisms. Nationalistic universalism is cloaking a country's foreign policy process output, which is a very political, sloppy, nasty process. They will cloak that complicated process in broadly appealing ideological religious symbols, right? So I already said how Americans would talk about promoting development and modernization and democracy. Stalin might instead talk about advancing the dialectic, that it's good for the Soviet Union to expand into Eastern Europe and spread communism there because he is accelerating, the Soviet Union is accelerating the natural objective laws of history to bring about finally the success of world socialism. And with the success of worldwide socialism, we will end imperialism and exploitation of man by man. Yay! So, and that's the theme for this statement. But basically, does it really make no difference that the United States is a federal system with strong division of powers between the Congress, the presidency, and also the Supreme Court, versus, for example, China's Communist Party-led system that they will find a way to expand if they can. And certainly, you know, the Chinese, being a rising hegemon, seeing the Americans since 30 years, since the Cold War ended, expand their control into Iraq and Afghanistan, say your democracy is no more peaceful than any other political system, right? So what is your response to that? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that in responding to the midterm exam? And so, as I said earlier, the midterm first draft should not be longer than 500 words. That doesn't include the references. That doesn't include the title and the like. You should use and cite information from at least 3 different chapters, from chapters 1 through 6 of the course textbook. And so you can use more information. You can use more chapters, but at least three chapters, information from at least 3 chapters should be used and cited, like I always ask you in your paragraphs, right? That your paragraphs, to be more persuasive, should use and cite information from the assigned reading for that week to support, develop, and refine its points. I want you to do that from 3 different chapters in the midterm paper. And you can do more research. Any information you get from other source, you should cite the source, right? You should cite the source. And so you will send me that draft by tomorrow morning, and I will then download them and send them back to you with my comments in the track function. And then next week, I will set up a Google document again and ask you to sign up for a Zoom conference session so that I will talk with you, like now, on Zoom to go over your midterm paper virtually. I'll share the screen, I'll ask you questions, you'll answer, and it'll be really fun. Because I've never done that on Zoom, but it seemed to be quite feasible on Zoom. You know, Zoom would be set up for something like that quite nicely. So, that's the plan. And of course, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me those questions. So today is our short class. And since it is our short class, I have to make sure that we save time for the in-class debate. And we're talking about the Congress. And, you know, it's been a big focus on the presidency. Oh, the presidency is so powerful. The imperial presidency has been critiqued beginning in the 1960s with the mistakes, perceived mistakes of the Johnson and then Nixon administrations fighting wars in the Middle East, and then also adopting domestic policies violating human rights of people to try to suppress their president's opponents, who the president claimed was undermining. These domestic opponents were undermining the United States of America's will and determination to resist, will and determination to win the war, undermining America's will to fight this war through their dissent, through their protests, through their attacks. And this was all critiqued as part of the so-called imperial presidency. But then, as I described earlier, right, that we see how when the Jimmy Carter comes into office, and he's still alive, by the way. He's 96 years old. He responding to the tragedy of the Vietnam War, began to talk in terms of human rights, and that would be the new focus of American foreign policy, not containment of the Soviet Union, but more of a strong focus on human rights would be his concern. And for people who saw the Soviet Union as the evil empire, they immediately responded in a hostile way that we lost that war in Vietnam because of stupid leadership, bad leadership, not because the Soviet Union is actually a non-aggressive power, but because we made mistakes. And Jimmy Carter is going to open up the opportunities to the Soviet Union to expand, because America no longer has the will and determination to resist the evil empire. And indeed we saw, because of nationalism and the rise of opposition to traditional leaders in post-imperial, post-European imperial empires, states like Angola. The Communist Party came to power in Angola, in Mozambique, another former Portuguese colony. We saw lots of third world African and Asian countries expressing their nationalism in Marxist terms, in Marxist ideological terms. And they did that because of their experience, right? Their experience as part of the French Empire, in particular, for example, in Vietnam, was very brutal and exploitative in order to make economic benefits for French corporations like Michelin, right? Michelin is a French tire manufacturer, and they brutally exploited the people of Vietnam in their rubber plantations to grow rubber before rubber was artificially produced. It was grown from plants, right? So the point is that for nationalism in Vietnam and a lot of these places who were so, in regions that were so intensely exploited for their natural resources and their human labor resources, almost as slaves, Marxist verbiage, Marxist ideology seemed to offer a strategy for achieving liberation. And the Americans responded to this. Many Americans responded to this, viewing this as evidence of Soviet imperialism. But again, I mean, from my perspective, these were nationalists that were talking in similar terms in terms of ideology, but they're nationalists first and Marxists second. And you saw that. I mean, just to go off on a tangent, you know, that soon after the Communist Party came to power in Cambodia and the Communist Party came to power in unified Vietnam, they were at war with each other, these two people's republics. Because the Vietnamese invaded Cambodia because the Cambodian communists were abusing the Vietnamese minority in Cambodia that lived on the border with Vietnam. And then communist China invaded, attacked communist Vietnam. Ah! Where is this world communist bloc? And then the Soviet Union, as I told you later, they asked Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon, what would the Americans do if the Soviet Union launched a preemptive nuclear attack on communist China? Where's this worldwide communist movement that's trying to take over the world? But that's a minority view. There emerged again when, by the time Jimmy Carter left office, American allies, brutal allies, have been overthrown in Nicaragua. They were under challenge in El Salvador, in Honduras. Communist parties come to power in Angola, in Mozambique. The Cubans had sent soldiers to Angola to fight the South African military, the white regime Afrikaner military in Southwest Africa, what is today Namibia, and elsewhere in Angola as well. And then the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in late 1979. And from their point of view, Ronald Reagan came to power and intensified America's commitment to containment, much like Jimmy Carter had by the end of his presidency. And then Mikhail Gorbachev comes to power in 1985 in the Soviet Union and begins his détente strategy. And by the end of the Reagan administration, communism is collapsing. And in 1989, under George H.W. Bush, Reagan's former vice president, the communist regimes collapse in Eastern Europe, and then the Soviet Union collapses, and the Republicans and the Cold Warriors claim credit for that. And the powers of the president remain very, very, very strong, and the US president then used those powers to build a new world order, as George H.W. Bush called it, when the Americans decided that they could not allow Saddam Hussein to become the Otto von Bismarck of the Arabs or the Kim Il-sung of the Arabs, and try to unify the Arabs under his president dictatorship by moving against the feudal regimes in the Persian Gulf, the oil sheikdoms, Kuwait, and later Saudi Arabia, and so on. And again, a glorious victory for American arms, supposedly. George H.W. Bush still lost the re-election in 1992, but America was going through a tremendous amount of economic growth under Bill Clinton, probably the longest period of growth ever in American history until that point. And the difficult challenges that would have been required, political challenges that would have been necessary in order to reduce the size of the American military were not really addressed at that point, because let me see if I can open up my my files here. It takes a lot of effort to reduce military expenditures. If, for example, just to show you some of the, let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, I'm just, oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, I got to go to this one here. Sorry. Okay, so for example, here's an article that came out just a couple years ago, 3 years ago, in which describing how Donald Trump, remember, Donald Trump is telling everybody, I don't want to get up since I was going to walk around the room, but I can't do that. Donald Trump was telling everybody that these American invasions in Afghanistan and Iraq were a disaster. Lots of money has been wasted. That money, trillions of dollars. He said during the campaign for president in 2016 that he was going to keep America from fighting these wars. And to get to the point, what has he done since he's become president? The US military budget for the defense is 20% greater than it was when he came into office in 2016. And this week's reading is about the Congress. The Congress is not pushing to cut that budget. Some members of Congress are. Some members of the US Congress were pushing to reduce American military expenditures. I remember much discussion about how the US should cut its military budget now that the Soviet Union is gone. Right, the Cold War is over. Let's spend that money for social programs, or let people keep the money rather than taxing people for that money. Let them keep the money, and there were certain Congress people making that push, but there were a lot more that were resisting, and they were resisting because so much of the U.S. economy, not just the U.S. economy, but the congressional districts that these congressmen and women come from often have military bases there where hundreds or thousands of people have jobs working for the military base. Or there's military personnel there who spend their money in the local economy, in the stores, in the restaurants, in the pizzerias, in the bars, in the Walmarts, in all the different stores. There are factories based in those congressional districts of Ilhan Omar or Jim Jordan or Bob Gibbs of mine, who they don't want those factories closed. They want to keep money coming to their districts that comes from the Defense Department budget. So closing these military bases and ending expenditures or reducing money spent for military production is very difficult because somebody's going to lose their jobs. And if you're a congressman, a senator, or a member of the House of Representatives, you lose jobs, you're going to weaken your ability to get reelected in your district. So this is from a few years ago, and I think it was a really important article in the New York Times highlighting how, remember, this is just less than a year, 9 months after Trump is president, he's inaugurated president in January 2017. It says here, if you want to see what President Trump can do to expand manufacturing in America, look past his criticism of free trade and the few jobs he may have saved at Carrier. That's a air conditioning company that makes air conditioners. Instead, look at his plans for the military. Manufacturing has always relied on public funding in one form or another, and in particular on outlays for weaponry, even nearly 3 decades after the end of the Cold War. So it's, been 30 years since the Cold War's been over. And we're spending more money on military. Roughly 10%, he says here, of the $2.2 trillion in factory output in the United States goes into the production of weapons sold mainly to the Defense Department for use by the armed forces. So this is how I am trying to explain to you the relationship of the US Congress to American foreign policy, right? The US Congress consists of people in the US Congress who want to get reelected. And cutting the military budget is extremely politically difficult because it's going to mean at least a short-term cost to these people as factories producing weapons close, as military bases close, and the money that's spent by those bases and their workers in the local economy, as I said, in the stores, in the bars, at the 7-Elevens, that all disappears. Maybe, of course, new businesses will emerge, but that takes time. And there are elections every 2 years in the United States for Congress. Every 2 years. That's nothing, right? And so there's not a big push in the US Congress. There are some congressmen, because you do have some unusual people, like we talked briefly about them last class, that do say and talk in these terms, but they're always in a small minority. They're always in a small political minority in both parties, Democrat and Republican. And the spending shows. This is a New York Times business report. The United States, after all, has 10 aircraft carriers in active service versus just one for China. I think they have more since then. This is 3 years old. I think another one came online. Although China is a bigger manufacturing industry than the United States, one can argue that China is bent on business increase in weapons production and is still in its early stages. Whatever the case, America's weapon production is still far greater than China's, while China has burnished its reputation as a manufacturer of civilian goods for export and increasing for its own citizens. And so now, by the way, as a related point, with the pandemic and the realization that so much of the world's production of personal protective equipment, PPE, like gowns, like masks, comes out of China, there's now talk in the US Congress about quote unquote reshoring, bringing back these production facilities that have moved to overseas, particularly China, back to the US. Again, strengthening even further the military industrial complex that we Americans, if we're going to compete with China, we need to have more of our own manufacturing capability located domestically. And it's done with a national security military justification, which means the Defense Department is going to play an even more important role in the US economy after COVID-19 and in the future dealing with the crises that emerge from global climate change and all the cascading local environmental disasters that are coming from that. So the US economy is becoming even more militarized. This operation, for example, to develop vaccines, Donald Trump's Operation Warp Speed, military personnel dominate in that organization. Military personnel far outnumber the civilian scientists that are directly involved in them. Although, of course, there are lots of companies and corporations, Pfizer and Moderna and others that have civilian scientists who are doing research. But the oversight of this is overwhelmingly military people. And the US Congress, they're appealing to national, even now, I know about this because I've been writing I wrote an article on this that I'm going to send out. And I've been busting my head over for months now. And so you see congressmen Senators are the ones pushing for reshoring American economic manufacturing capacity back to the United States in the name of national security, military national security. And so, again, you might say, but there's supposed to be a difference between China and America and Stalin's Soviet Union, and we say that the Soviet Union was a highly militarized society, right? That a huge portion of the Soviet budget out of Moscow during the communist times went to military production. Now you see it going more and more, formally or informally, to the U.S. economy. I mean, he makes this point in this article about how 10% of the factory output in the U.S. is sold mainly to the Defense Department. It's going to become even more. He goes on here, the United States once went that route. In the summer of 1945, after nearly 5 years of wartime rationing, the civilian population of the United States was starved for new cars and appliances, new clothing and shoes, new homes and their furnishings. So was the rest of the world, and American manufacturers prospered by meeting that need as well. Converting factories to civilian production was a no-brainer and sufficiently profitable to match wartime earnings. After the Korean War in the early 1950s, however, a somewhat similar conversion back to civilian production wasn't as profitable. That's during the Cold War, right? And companies that considered it in the early 1990s, like General Dynamics in Groton, Connecticut, decided to stick with making weapons for the Defense Department. Remember, this is when the Soviet Union fell apart in the early 1990s. These companies argued accurately that military work was more profitable and in those days generated more jobs. As weapons production increased, the manufacture of autos and electronics shifted partly or wholly overseas. Take to Korea, right? So did the production of other civilian products, leaving behind weapons bought by the Defense Department as an even bigger share of the nation's factories' output. While President Dwight D. Eisenhower warned of the perils of the military-industrial complex in his farewell address to the U.S. people in January 1961, the Vietnam War accentuated this reliance on weapons production, which became embedded in annual budgets. That may well continue in the years ahead. In his first budget proposal in May, Mr. Trump called for significant cuts in domestic spending, but roughly a 10% increase in military outlays. So, it goes on here. Public money flows to factory owners in many ways, often as a result of the frequent bidding by municipal governments to persuade a manufacturer to locate a factory in one community rather than another. These auctions sometimes top $100 million per factory location. So, well, that just highlights it, right? So this military-industrial complex was a notion which was given to us ironically by Dwight Eisenhower. He was the US general, much like Donald Trump. He was never an elected politician. I mean, not like Donald Trump in many ways. But Dwight Eisenhower had been US president leading US forces during World War II. And then he ran for president. It was the first time he ran for president. Ran for political office. He had never been elected to anything, like Donald Trump had never been elected to anything before. And he gave a speech when he was leaving office warning about this huge investment of the US economy in the military during the containment of the Soviet Union, warning against it, right? So here is him speaking in a short 3-minute video. And this term, military-industrial complex, is always used now by Americans and others to refer to these economic.
This speech did not get very much attention. When a new president is coming to power, as John Kennedy was, the spotlight was not on Dwight Eisenhower.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions.
There was a feeling at the time that this must have been written by some speechwriter who just sneaked into the speech.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
3 months ago.
So that summarizes it. And Donald Trump is not challenging that, despite his words during the campaign for president. And that just highlights okay, so again, we have 1 week to cover the Congress, right? And we'll come back to these notions as well. Another way that the Congress, again, as a secondary actor in foreign policy, attempts to, I can't get up, to show its impact on the US presidency is by lobbying as an ethnic lobby, as ethnic groups. So if you are Taiwan, and you want America to recognize Taiwan as an independent state, and Donald Trump is not willing to do that because he knows the high costs of political and potentially economic, you try to pressure Donald Trump through many ways. One way would be through advertising campaign in the US media, working with sympathetic teachers and professors and media people. But another way is trying to work through congressmen, senators, and members of the House of Representatives to promote Taiwan's interests. And that is one important way by which the Israel lobby, the Taiwan lobby, the Armenian lobby, as we were talking about in the European policymaking class, attempts to push the US government, the US president, to promoting Armenian national objectives or Taiwan nationalist objectives through trying to lobby the US Congress, in turn for the congressman then to appeal to and pressure the US president to be sympathetic. So here was announced just a couple days ago, on Thursday, 50 senators of both parties, Republican and Democrat, sent a letter to Donald Trump's trade negotiator, Lighthizer, a letter urging him to begin the formal process of negotiating a trade pact with Taiwan, a self-governing island that Beijing claims as part of its territory. Such a move would likely anger Beijing, which sees certain partnerships with Taiwan as an affront to China's sovereignty. And the Taiwan government, if I were advising them, this is an opportunity as the US president is trying to scapegoat China for the epidemic, the coronavirus, and as America is going through a nationalist phase in this time of great stress because nationalism emerges during a period of accelerating change within the society, and we're seeing accelerating changes in American society going on right now, that this might be a time to get America to recognize, go back to recognizing Taiwan as a separate country. And they're saying it would be good for American security and the Indo-Pacific region, and also, of course, that Taiwan is as a democracy, like South Korea since the late 1980s, and democracies should be valued and protected from the totalitarian communist regime of China. And so Taiwan is home to fewer than 24 million people, but it has the 10th largest US trading partner. It was the 10th largest US trading partner in 2019, providing a large market for American agricultural products and arms sales. American officials have also come to see Taiwan, a major electronics supplier, as it manufactures the silicon chips used in the most advanced computers. And America has no problem with that because Taiwan, like South Korea, are so tightly integrated into American sphere of influence that America, it tends not to view Taiwan as an external danger to American national security. In fact, they want Taiwan to build a silicon chip manufacturing factory in the US owned by a Taiwan company. I think Samsung is talking about the same thing under US pressure. They're going to build a silicon chip factory in the United States under Trump's pressure. And even if Trump loses, this pressure will likely continue because you saw in that previous letter, it's across party, 50 senators of both parties, Democrat and Republican, because America is a nation state and acts nationalistically. And so, so Mr. Trump has also appeared circumspect of closer ties with Taiwan. The president who provoked China's ire shortly after the 2016 election by accepting a congratulatory phone call from Ms. Tsai, the president of Taiwan, has long made clear to advisors the importance he places on China, on a China-made deal. But Mr. Trump repeatedly emphasized Taiwan's lack of importance by comparing the island to a tip of a Sharpie in China, the resolute desk in the Oval Office, John Bolton, Mr. Trump's former security advisor, wrote in his book. But elsewhere in Washington, like the Congress, support for closer ties with Taiwan is growing. Keep in mind, like I told my European policymaking class, in times of nationalism and national crises, economic interest group behavior will be overridden by nationalism. I can well imagine, despite the economic costs being paid to the United States, if it recognizes Taiwan, that America, in this time of great stress and humiliation, lashes out and recognizes Taiwan as a sovereign state because of nationalism. So my question to you, time for a poll. Someday, Beijing will reclaim sovereignty over Taiwan. So let's go to a poll. Let's go to a poll, and let me open up that poll. And launch poll. Can you see that? So please take the poll. Someday, Beijing will reclaim sovereignty over Taiwan. Very likely, likely, neutral, unlikely, very unlikely. Vote! So far, you overwhelmingly, there's three of you haven't voted yet. Two of you. Two more, come on. Come on. We're only to vote 1 minute to this, so when it gets to 60 seconds, I'll end the poll. 15 seconds. So it looks like, well, yeah, 8 of you think it's likely or very likely out of a class of 13 think that this is likely to happen. So end poll, and I got to share the results. Share results. So there you see the results. Really? You think the United States will let Beijing, under the Communist Party, reclaim Taiwan and do to Taiwan what China is now doing to Hong Kong? Any of you been to Hong Kong? I've been to Hong Kong. I like Hong Kong. I really like that place. It's, oh, okay. I don't know. I really don't have an answer. So, so that's the summary of how to look at the role of the U.S. Congress and the U.S. presidency. It's all still focused on pressuring the president and the presidency regarding his desires for re-election, his desires for support to keep control of the Congress under his party, or his domination of the Congress, keeping his party in control over the Congress so that he can more easily do what he needs to do. But he has to be convinced by the Congress people that he needs to change U.S. policy, like by recognizing Taiwan or negotiating an FTA with Taiwan is going to be good for the Republican Party. When he's getting lots of feedback that it's not, because of all the business investments of American companies already in Beijing and the punishment that Beijing could generate, as well as the costs, in spite of the cost that Beijing would pay. But, you know, during the Cold War, Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang in Taiwan, they were America's darlings. They were loved by Cold Warriors during the Cold War because they were the anti-communist Chinese. We had to defend Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang. They were America's darlings among the Cold Warriors. Then under Nixon and then under Jimmy Carter, America distanced itself from Taiwan, but Taiwan still has lots of support and sympathy within the American Republic, within the American political system, for the reasons they say. We have lots of family ties, we have lots of Christians in Taiwan, and we're a democracy, and Beijing is bad. Beijing is expanding the South China Sea. And I can well imagine a scenario where the Americans just announced that, well, we're reopening what they call it, their cultural center in Taipei, and say, oh, we're going to change the sign, and it's now an embassy again. Because it's a de facto embassy, if not officially. So they're just going to officially make it the embassy. and then say, what are you going to do about China? What are you going to do about it? You're going to invade Taiwan? Hard to do that with one aircraft carrier. What are you going to do? Okay, so let's go back to the debate topic. So, okay, so we have to go now into breakout groups, and so we go back to stop share and close that, and let me see, divide you into, let me see, okay, let's, then I have to assign you, and it's going to take time. So go like this, and we go into 4 groups and create, and the person that's number 1 is automatically the chair, and those are the 4 groups. So Claret, Clara, Park Ho Young, it's this automatic, Hyun Chul, and Yarno. It should be, so please, okay, and so, and of course I didn't bring a coin with me to flip. So, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a rabbit by his toe. If he hovers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny. So yeah, where I stop is pro. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a rabbit by his toe. If he hovers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So group 1 and 2, you are pro. Group 3 and 4, you are con on the debate question. On the debate question. 1 and 2 is pro. 3 and 4 is con on the debate question. And let me see if I can go back to the debate question. And so some of you are here electronically, some of you are in class, but it doesn't really matter where you are. So that's the topic. Pro to South Koreans, the Republic of Korea Constitution more appropriately positions, it's better. The relationship of the South Korean legislature to the executive branch is better for wiser foreign policy than the American system, where the president is not so directly over control, is not formally so dominant over the US Congress. So 1 and 2 is pro, 3 and 4 is con. You've got 3 minutes. So please take charge, chair people. Please take charge and go back to the breakout rooms there. So Sung Yun Moon, you're the chair because Yarno is, who knows where Yarno is? Sung Yun, who's Sung Yun Moon? Sung Yun Moon, you are the chair, Sung Yun Moon. Because Yarno is nowhere to be found. And Sung Hun you're by yourself. Since Laura is nowhere to be found, Sung you're by yourself. Whose iPhone? It's iPhone. Yes, that South Korea's constitutional relationship of the legislature to the executive is generally better for making wiser South Korean foreign policy than the old American Constitution with its separation of power. 3 and 4 is con. So I will then group 1.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. So for the debate topic, I couldn't really decide on which side I was with pro or con.
You are pro.
I was pro?
No,
Yes.
he was saying for the assignment that she
Yeah.
couldn't decide which side that she wanted to be.
What?
We were talking that on the assignment, what side did you choose then?
What was our choice?
You're pro
Okay.
on this topic.
Yeah, we know. So
So what did you choose?
I was
I
on the
was
side
pro.
of pros.
Ideal.
Yeah, because I said that mainly because mm, it to me it seems like the U.S. Constitution and the Congress gives
Mm-hmm.
more power to president when it comes to the foreign policy.
한국, sir, we are
Okay, okay. Oh my God. Oh.
Okay, so let's hear what Laura or Sungum, what's your group statement as to pro?
So we are in the side of pro, and we were thinking that Korean constitution might fit better for the foreign policy making, because the Korean government is more separated in power. So when it comes to making foreign policy decisions, like there are more people that we could think over the matter. And
Ah, interesting, interesting. Okay, okay, and so we only have a couple minutes left. Group 3, Kim Hyun Chul, your con, what's your con statement?
Yeah, actually, we had a technical problem to talk with each other, so I just want to summarize my statement on the segment. So insistence is like American Constitution is like basically highly simple, and there's not much of the content written on the Constitution. So it used to the modern problems deal with by the law could not be solved as a whole, but they use a judgment of precedent for the same purpose as well. So I think the Korean constitution is much more powerful.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Group 2, Ho Young, your pro statement.
Oh, sir, I decided to be the speaker for this one.
Okay,
So I'm gonna keep it nice and short. So every country has their own background, their own characteristics, right? So America, for instance, they're the hegemon. They have a lot of capabilities, both militaristically and influence-wise. On the other hand, Korea, we're sandwiched between Japan and China. Like, we don't have that much capabilities. So every constitution fits the nation is inside, respectively. So I would say that Korea's constitution would be better for Korea.
okay, okay. And um, Yarno, or no, who did I say? Sung Yun
Yes.
Hoon.
Oh, yes, Professor.
Yes.
We are on the side of the cons. So even though we don't have enough times and we have some point of our opinion, first of all, the Congress cannot make consent with President always. So even if the president as absent a couple months ago, a couple of months, so it can Congress will remain well without and can revoke, and the constraint against president align with Congress. So the U.S. Constitution is more flexible and suitable.
Interesting. Okay, I really appreciate this debate because I do learn from when we do these exercises. I really appreciate that. I need to learn too. And okay, so we need to do one more poll to end, and let's go to the poll. And who won the debate? Launch poll. Two more. Okay, everybody voted, so end poll, share results. So it's split 6-6. You know, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, you know, somebody like Donald Trump, if he's afraid of the Congress, like I said, I mean, did Donald Trump kill Qasem Soleimani in Iran because he wanted to intimidate the Congress that was trying to impeach him, or that was impeaching him and put him on trial because he doesn't control the Congress, he doesn't have a close relationship to the Congress? Would that happen in Korea? Because the president has much more influence over this and the National Assembly in Korea than constitutionally, because the prime minister serves the president. And the prime minister is the prime minister because the prime minister controls the majority of the assembly. Not an easy answer. Not an easy answer. So again, that was interesting. All right, well, thank you very much. And I'll see you in class on Monday, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, bye.